Are we in the jungles of Africa? No, we're at a Walmart in Prosper, Texas. Hello everybody. I recently visited the Walmart there in Prosper, Texas, and as soon as I got out of my vehicle, I could tell something was off. It sounded like a zoo, and I could hear parrots and other birds, and I wondered what was going on. Were these birds that escaped captivity and set up shop around that Walmart? So I investigated, but I couldn't find any birds. All I saw were some little green things protruding from the store, which I guess are speakers, and they were pumping out bird calls. Loud, obnoxious bird calls. I had a fairly good idea of why they were doing it, but while I was inside, I went ahead and spoke to the greeter, and he said that yes, they were playing the calls of African birds because it scares away all the other birds that gather at the front of the store. And I assumed that he was talking mostly about great-tailed grackles. I don't know how it is where you live, but great-tailed grackles in Texas are insane, especially in parking lots of shopping centers and department stores. I mean, sometimes they can number in the thousands or maybe tens of thousands in certain places. And the further south you go, the worse it gets. I looked around in the trees in the front of the store and there were no great-tailed grackles. I mean, there were a few here and there, but they were mostly farther away from the store, so maybe it works. I don't know. Learn something new every day. But anyway, since my last video, which was about a birding trip that I took in mid-March, and I listed the black and white warbler as big ear bird number 124, I realized I'd forgot to add a bird to that list, and so the black and white warbler was big ear bird number 125. Mea culpa. But anyway, since then, I've been super busy. We had, I've had a couple of disasters at my house. And I've been super busy taking care of that, plus working and other stuff, and I haven't had time to take any dedicated birding trips. However, it is migration, and I've been seeing a lot of birds here and there sporadically. On April 1st, I saw a red-headed woodpecker, which I'm pretty certain I'd seen before, but forgot to put on the list, so shame on me. Also on that day, I took a trip to my daughter's house, but I stopped by a couple of places on the way. At a small pine forest located off a county road, I heard then saw a yellow-throated warbler. Then, just down the way, I saw a crested caracara. He was walking on the ground, and it wasn't an unexpected sighting. They are rare in Oklahoma, but in this particular location, there has been a nesting pair for about the last 3 or 4 years at least. Then, throughout the rest of the day, I saw at least 6 scissor-tailed flycatchers, big ear bird number 128. On Saturday, April 6th, I briefly saw, then heard, a field sparrow near my home. Later that day, I saw barn swallows and cliff swallows. On April 12th, just east of I-35 near Paoli, Oklahoma, of all places, I saw a large line of Swainson's hawks, which were just cruising north kind of in a row. After a little while, they formed into a kettle. There were dozens of birds, and I think they must have been taking advantage of some sort of wind current before getting back into the kettle. Also, later that day, I heard then saw dozens of Franklin's gulls flying over my house. They were migrating. I love hearing the sounds they make, which is similar to laughing gulls, so it instantly reminds me of being at the coast. On April 13th, I was at my son's residence when I heard then saw my first of year chimney swifts. I'm fairly certain I heard them a couple of days before, but I didn't see them, so I didn't count them. Sunday, April 14th turned out to be a very big day, even though I hadn't planned on it. I had to travel quite a bit, but not for birding. While driving south on I-35 through the Arbuckle Mountains near Sulphur, Oklahoma, a hawk was circling overhead, traveling north as it did, and I could tell it wasn't the usual red-tailed hawk. I was driving and I didn't want to wreck, but I was able to get a good look at it from underneath, and I could tell it was an immature, light-morph, rough-legged hawk. The colors in the shoulder patches stood out like crazy. I was ecstatic as I hadn't seen a rough-legged hawk in probably a decade. I'm no expert on that species, but I was quite surprised to see that it was in the area at this time of year. Also, while driving on I-35, which passes by a lake near Ardmore, Oklahoma called Lake Gene Neustadt, I saw my first of season osprey flying overhead. From a distance, I could tell that the bird's wingspan was much too wide to be a hawk, but the bird itself was too small to be an eagle, so I guessed it was an osprey. When I got close, I confirmed it was an osprey, and it had a fish in its talons. It twisted and turned very quickly, as if it almost dropped the fish, but I don't think that was the case. It was quite windy that day, with up to 30-mile-per-hour gusts, and with the lake effect winds, I imagine it was struggling with that. April 14th was also the day that I visited the Walmart in Prosper, Texas. And near Salina, Texas, I saw several cattle egrets flying overhead, and also saw a snowy egret in the distance, also flying overhead. Not far from Hagerman National Wildlife Refuge near Pottsboro, Texas, I stopped along a highway where every year some cave swallows nest in several box culverts that go under the road. And of course, I had to go through the refuge, even though I didn't have a lot of time and I wasn't feeling very well. Yeah, I don't feel well. At the refuge, I saw about 68 Hudsonian godwits and a first-of-year blue-gray gnatcatcher. I had heard one behind my house a couple of days before, but I didn't count it as I knew I would see one eventually. They are abundant every year. After that, I stopped in a location on the refuge and heard, then briefly saw a prothonotary warbler, which are fairly common there during the breeding season. I traveled west of the refuge looking for my favorite shorebirds with bulbous heads, but all I located was a couple of first-of-year lark sparrows, which was nice. Also, I found this peculiar scene. Obviously, a shrike had been here. Slightly disappointed that I didn't see the upland sandpipers, I drove west heading home, and just as I was about to leave the habitat for which they are known, I saw two of them in a front yard of a ranch house. I could have stopped and got a photo, but I'm always a little leery of pointing my camera at someone's house, especially a ranch. However, I returned to Hagerman the following day with my son, and we saw about 100 upland sandpipers. And I got a lot of great footage of upland sandpipers, but deleted it before I downloaded it. I can't believe I did that, but it's just one more in a line of small disasters. A little bit later, while on the refuge, we heard then saw an indigo bunting, then heard a yellow-breasted chat and a yellow-throated vireo. Also, my son spotted two first-of-season little blue herons. At my house the next day, April 16th, I heard and saw a Nashville warbler, a warbling vireo, a red-eyed vireo, a great-crested flycatcher, and a Baltimore oriole. On Thursday, April 18th, also at my home, I heard then saw a yellow warbler. Then, I saw several western kingbirds. I love seeing western kingbirds every year because where I live, that usually signals that the real cold weather is over. Later that same day, in the woods south of my house, I heard the wonderful zany song of the Swainson's thrush. I love hearing that strange song, which sounds like some sort of crazy carnival kazoo, if you ask me. And I only get to hear it for about 3 weeks as they pass through during spring migration. On April 19th, while driving down a highway, I saw my first-of-year eastern kingbird. I hope you enjoyed the video. I should be putting out another big year update video pretty soon.